All right, let's get into it. Every time a building comes down, a new one goes up, or even when a tree gets trimmed, you get wood waste. It's everywhere. But have you ever really stopped to think about what happens after it's all hauled away? Well, today, we're going to follow that hidden journey. So you see a pile of wood like this, right? And you probably think, oh, that's going to get recycled or reused for sure. But the reality, well, it's way more complicated than that. It all starts with a very simple question. What happens next?
And here is our first big number. And honestly, it's kind of a shocker. With all the talk about going green and recycling, here in Ontario, in the industrial, commercial, and institutional sector, only about 15% of all waste actually gets diverted from the landfill. 15! That means a huge amount of material, including tons of wood, is just getting buried.
And that place it's getting buried? Well, we're running out of room. Fast. At the rate we're going, all of Ontario's landfill space is projected to be completely full in as little as 11 years. I mean, this isn't some far-off problem for another generation. It is right around the corner, which makes figuring out this wood waste journey more important than ever. Okay, so this is where it all begins. The entire fate of a piece of scrap wood, its entire journey hinges on this one single question. Is it clean or is it contaminated? This one decision changes absolutely everything that comes after. And we have to get specific here because, the law is very specific. According to Ontario's Regulation 347, the term wood waste legally means pure, untreated wood. Think tree branches, raw lumber, that kind of thing. But the second you add certain preservatives or slap some upholstery on it or even some types of paint, boom, it's not simple wood waste anymore. And this chart lays out the two different paths perfectly. Over on the left, you've got your clean wood waste. That stuff's pretty straightforward. It can be recycled, it can be burned for energy, and it's managed as non-hazardous. But on the right, you have treated wood. Once it's been painted, stained, or pressure treated, its journey gets really complex. It might not even be eligible for regular recycling, and it can actually get reclassified as hazardous waste. Yeah, we're talking about some pretty serious chemicals here. Stuff like creosote, which you see on old railway ties, or pentachlorophenol on utility poles. Even something as simple as old lead-based paint, which is super common in buildings from before the late 70s, can instantly turn a pile of scrap wood into a hazardous waste problem that needs very special handling. Now, what's really fascinating is just how precise this all is. To figure out if wood is officially hazardous, they run a special test that basically mimics what happens in a landfill to see what chemicals leach out. And if the amount of a contaminant that escapes is over these super strict limits, that wood is now, by law, hazardous waste. It is a very clear scientific line in the sand. All right, so let's move on to the next stage. After the wood leaves the site, it enters the world of the middleman. These are the service providers, the companies that are the logistical backbone of this whole system. And these companies, like 905wood.com, they operate on a huge scale. They've got everything from the smaller 20-yard bins you might see at a home reno to massive 40-yard roll-offs for big construction projects, all the way up to these gigantic 144-yard walking floor trailers for huge industrial facilities. It's a serious heavy-duty operation. So, how do you get billed for this? Well, there are two main ways it's done. You've got the bundled flat rate, which is simple. One price covers the bin and a set amount of weight. But then there's a decoupled model, which can be a lot more accurate. You pay a base fee for the bin itself, and then the weight is billed separately. This is a big deal for wood because, think about it, a load of wet, soggy wood weighs a heck of a lot more than a load of dry, light wood. So what happens when everything goes right? When the wood is clean and it gets successfully diverted from the landfill? Well, this is where the story gets really cool and optimistic. This is where we see all the amazing pathways that give this material a second life. And there are four main routes that are pretty incredible. First, it can power the bioeconomy by creating heat, electricity, even renewable natural gas. Second, it can be turned into something called biochar, which is basically a biocoal that can literally replace fossil fuels in heavy industry like steelmaking. How cool is that? Third is the one we're all familiar with, grinding it up into mulch for gardens or bedding for farm animals. And finally, the really special, high-quality wood can be reclaimed and upcycled, living on as beautiful furniture or architectural pieces with a whole new story to tell. And this isn't just some small niche industry. This is a strategic priority for the province. Ontario's Forest Biomass Action Plan is actively trying to grow these new markets. They're working to turn what we used to think of as just waste into a valuable resource for a growing bioeconomy. Okay, but if all these amazing pathways exist, we have to go back to that first number we saw. Why is so little wood waste actually being recycled? It's time for a reality check. This is really the central question here, isn't it? The technology is there, the innovative uses exist, so what's stopping us from creating a fully circular system? Well, the answer, as it so often does, really comes down to logistics and cold, hard cash. And this chart says it all. Just look at that difference. It can cost as little as $40 a ton to just dump wood waste in a landfill. But to take it to a proper sorting facility so it can be recycled, that can shoot up to $250 a ton. That huge price gap creates a really powerful economic incentive to just choose the landfill. So, to sum it all up, we're facing three huge hurdles. First, as we just saw, the economics are working against recycling. It's just plain cheaper to dump it. Second is contamination. One load of wood that's mixed with a bit of drywall or plastic can get the entire bin rejected from a recycling facility. And that risk is a big reason why sorting is so expensive in the first place. And third, we just don't have enough good data, which makes it incredibly hard for policymakers to design programs that actually work.
And that leaves us with this final massive question. We are in a race against the clock as our landfills fill up. The real challenge is this: can Ontario's innovators, businesses, and government find a way to close that economic gap? Can they restructure the system so that turning wood waste into a valuable resource becomes the normal, default option and not the expensive exception?